Welcome into your Weather Impact extended weekend forecast exclusively here on 13 WMAZ Plus. It's been a pretty quiet stretch of weather, I'm sure you can't imagine. Obviously, not much in the way of rain that's impacting any of your outdoor plans, and that's really dated back all the way into the month of September. It's also correlated to a very dry stretch of weather in central Georgia. Well, funny thing is, Mother Nature kind of knows when you have a quiet stretch of weather and then decides to flip the script. So now we have a lot going on weather-wise. So we'll break down your full weekend forecast, talk about when your best chances of rain are going to be, a big time cool down as we head into the beginning of the work week next week, and then we'll talk about what's ahead in your extended forecast. But first things first, if you have missed it over the last couple of days, we have issued a weather impact alert. Now, this isn't of immediate concern. This is just something to keep in the back of your mind, especially as we head towards the end of the weekend and start to transition into the beginning of next week. So the first freeze of fall is on the horizon next Tuesday morning, and next Tuesday going to be Veterans Day. So Veterans Day morning, any maybe memorials that you are going to have, any celebrations for all those veterans out there. Early in the morning, it is going to be blistering cold. And I'm not just talking about temperatures right there around 32 degrees. We're talking about widespread morning low temperatures below that 32 degree mark, and by a good amount of degrees. We're actually seeing some models even call for the low 20s. Now that's definitely on the lower end of the range. We've gone with more of a middle ground low temperature as we start Tuesday morning, but still quite some shocking numbers, and it seems like it's pretty early, but we'll talk about that first freeze a little bit more because that's kind of in the extended portion of your forecast, not necessarily pertaining to this weekend. But what we'll be keeping an eye out for over the course of this weekend will be the frost and freeze alerts, specifically a freeze warning that is very likely to get issued as we get closer to the date of this first freeze. And of course, take the proper precautions to protect the 4 P's: pets, plants, pipes, and people. And what I mean by people, it simply may just be yourself, making sure that you're dressing warm as you make your way outside and continue to dress warm into the afternoon. But let's start out with your rainfall graphic. November's been very quiet so far. The first 6 days of the month, we have not recorded any rain at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, so it's resulted in a steady decline from that near normal box now into the dry category. So on average, we see a little bit more rain in the month of November as opposed to what we saw in the month of October, around 2 3/4 inches of rainfall on average for the month of November all time. The record came back in 1992, just over 10 1/4 inches of rain. And we're not off to a hot start so far, so it doesn't look like that record is really going to be achievable here. But for the calendar year of 2025, we are still above average by just over 2 inches, and it's really thanks to 3 months individually, May, June, and especially the month of August, where we were 6 inches above what we normally see in terms of rainfall in the month of August. This came after a very dry July. In fact, July actually the driest month when it comes to how much rain we received in terms of what we typically see. July is a pretty wet month on the calendar year. But then September and October have marked 2 consecutive months where we have been below the average rainfall, and we are right now just over a 1/2 inch of rainfall below where we should be at this point in November. I believe I might have said below, but just above a 1/2 inch of rainfall below where we should be at this point in November. So all this data is as of November 6th. We'll continue to see if we can put a dent in that and maybe start to get a green box up on top of all of these months that you do see on the 2025 rainfall graphic. And it does look like we have some decent shots at seeing some rain this weekend. And we got a new update to your drought monitor. Very thankfully, not much did change. We still have portions of a severe drought creeping over into Pike County, western Upson County, western Taylor County, and this patch of an extreme drought up to the northwest of us. This actually got a bit slimmer, and you can notice on the top of your screen, there's areas where you can actually see the landscape of the earth. So some areas that are not even in abnormally dry or moderate drought conditions, as North Georgia got most of the rainfall with our last rainmaker that moved through last week. And we also see portions of an extreme and severe drought creeping into the southern end of Chris County. And we did see a little bit of fluctuation over in this patch towards the east. It was really just this top section right here that was stretching over into portions of Johnson County, all across northern Emmanuel County. Well, we now see that it stretches a little bit farther south, portions of Trutland, Wheeler, Montgomery, and along with that Toombs County, all in portions of a severe drought. Most of central Georgia still lying in those moderate drought conditions. So this is as of November 4th, which was this past Tuesday. We'll get another issuing of this drought monitor next Thursday. So we get that release every Thursday morning, but it takes all the data as of the previous Tuesday. So now let's take a look at what FutureView has in store for rain as we head across your weekend. Let's go ahead and flash forward to the end of the workday on Friday, where we see clouds creeping over from the west, and we also see a couple of spotty showers farther over to the west. Some of those are going to move across central Georgia as we go into the nighttime hours. That's what we've been trying to nail down, specifically the timing of that rain for your Friday night plans. And it does look like you may have to duck and dodge a shower or two. I wouldn't even rule out maybe seeing some portions and some pockets of some heavier rainfall during the nighttime hours. But we are getting very lucky with the passing of two frontal boundaries that will come through this weekend. This is going to be the entrance of the first frontal boundary, and take a look at the time. That is going to be the important and tell-all thing with your forecast. Cooler portions of the day are not going to result in as heavy a rainfall or as active weather. Maybe not going to see something in the form of severe thunderstorms like other areas that get the passage of this boundary during that prime heating time frame each and every afternoon. But we'll go all the way into your Saturday morning. This is really early at 6 a.m., probably before many of you are awake. We do actually start to see some pockets of some steadier and some heavier rainfall. Don't get fixed on the specific location of this rain, but just know we have the potential for Saturday morning being a bit of a dreary and a messy forecast, especially where maybe some pockets of a couple rumbles of thunder are going to exist. I'm still not buying much in the way of severe weather, but it does look like rain will hang out in the picture into Saturday afternoon, but we do see plenty of clearing. So the main messaging with my forecast will be on and off rain. And what I mean by that is you'll have your periods where the rain is going, where the rain is more widespread, but you'll also have plenty of times where it's nice and dry outside and you don't have to duck and dodge any of those showers or even a potential storm. So go ahead and keep your outdoor plans, because this rain very scattered and spotty in nature, and that was the first of the two frontal boundaries I was referring to. It's not going to be as strong as the secondary boundary that will pass through on Sunday. So this is 5 a.m. on Sunday. A couple of showers, maybe even a storm or two trying to pass through central Georgia during that morning time frame. But as we continue to go to that cooler portion of the day, that coolest portion going to be right around 4, 5, getting into 6 and 7 a.m. right before the sun does begin to rise. And after this secondary frontal boundary passes through, take a look at what's behind. Not only some breezy conditions, but drier air takes over, and that's going to clear all the clouds and all of the pesky showers out of the forecast sometime around lunchtime on Sunday, maybe a little bit later than lunchtime, but it does look like we are going to end the weekend on a dry note. And as we get into, I guess, about an hour before this, around the 6 p.m. hour, we'll get a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous image of that sunset. And future view goes all the way to Monday at 1 a.m. Maybe a few clouds trying to hang around on the backside of that front, but nothing to worry about, I do believe. So taking a look at your storm outlooks, this is something we haven't really talked about as of recently. It's been a very dry stretch, and that obviously hasn't correlated to much in the way of some active weather, especially nothing in the way of severe weather. Well, here's your day one storm outlook. West central Georgia and western Georgia going to have the greatest potential for maybe some more active weather in the form of a stronger storm or two. Wouldn't even rule a severe storm out of the cards. That last model run of Future View that I just showed you, obviously not buying that. But that's where I do think the potential is greater. The farther west that you live, that's where you do see areas outlined in that green shade. That low end level 1 out of 5 risk for seeing some potentially strong to severe weather. And then as we go into your day 3 outlook, not quite sure why the graphic did stall out on me here. You can see south and southeast central Georgia here on the bottom right of your screen is included in one of those level 1 out of 5 risks, just like we saw for your Friday. This is going to be on Sunday, mainly because the frontal boundary will be coming through during the morning hours. So if we are to get into kind of the warmer portions of the day where our temperatures start to warm up just past sunrise, maybe just around lunchtime, we could see activity start to flare up ahead of that frontal boundary if it hasn't quite made its way out of central Georgia just yet. Latest run of Future View had it exiting stage right, but if that front is to trend a little bit later into the morning hours and say still be passing through during the afternoon time frame, that's when it would result in maybe a stray storm or two. So I guess I just put an accidental pause point on that, but you can see this level 1 risk on Sunday goes for Dublin, Soperton, Vidalia, McRae, Eastman, Abbeville, portions of Cordele, maybe even up into Wrightsville. All in all, the main messaging is, yes, you do have the potential for seeing maybe a stronger storm or something of the way or in the way of severe weather, but our confidence in that is very low. We're getting very lucky with the timing of these fronts trying to pass through during the overnight and early morning hours when our temperatures are cooler, but I do expect some on and off rain throughout the duration of most of your weekend. So the humidity is going to help us pick apart specifically the risk for some widespread rain or maybe even something in the way of some stronger weather. We don't see much in the way of humidity. It does look like it's a lot more humid back over to the west, hence why that level 1 is for areas of West Georgia going back into Alabama. So the areas that do have a bit more moisture in the air, that's where you're going to see the greater potential for some more active weather, and it looks like patches of dew point temperatures in the 70s are present down to the south of us. So I think south central Georgia, southeast central Georgia, areas like Wilcox, Telfair, Dodge, Wheeler counties, you guys have a greater potential for maybe some thunderstorms as opposed to other areas farther to the north like Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock counties. And then after we get through Saturday, we still hold on to a little bit of the humidity going into Sunday morning, but then the drier air starts to push in behind that second front, and that's going to really dry us out, drop dew point temperatures down into the 30s. I anticipate even lower by the time we go into the beginning of next week because those dew point temperatures, they can't be above where your actual temperatures are. And I just told you with that weather impact alert, we're forecasting temperatures below the 32-degree mark as we roll into Tuesday morning. In terms of the winds, maybe a steady breeze at times, nothing really that's going to be worth noting over your Friday or over your Saturday. But then as we transition into the early morning hours on Sunday, that's when the breeze is a lot more widespread. Still a pretty light breeze right here, maybe a 12 to 18 mile per hour gust, but it's Sunday afternoon that the winds get gustier and gustier, gusts up to 20 to even 25 miles per hour just past lunchtime on Sunday, and that will continue to be very widespread, and the winds will continue to blow at a pretty good pace, even into the overnight hours, into early Monday morning. Now, if we factor in those winds with some of your temperatures, your wind chills are going to be a couple degrees below what the actual temperatures are, and a bit of a spoiler alert, they're already mighty cold. So how about some rainfall? Do we see some widespread totals, maybe over an inch or two, to maybe put an end to some of these drought conditions that have settled in? The short answer to that is no, once again. Unfortunately, we're not looking at widespread rainfall totals, maybe up to an inch or two, but there are some pockets of some gray color, maybe even getting into the purple color, farther down to the south and the southeast, maybe over in west central Georgia. So once again, those areas that have the potential for maybe some stronger weather, it is also going to correlate to some heavier rainfall rates. So getting something in the way of maybe a few rumbles of thunder, some gusty winds is kind of a welcome trade-off given how dry our forecast has been, but don't go counting on it. Only about a tenth or two, maybe even upwards to about a half inch of rain should be fairly widespread across most of the area. Just some localized areas will get lucky and see some totals that are higher than the rest of the bunch. So for the next 3 days, what should you plan on? I wouldn't rule out the potential for maybe a few rumbles of thunder throughout each of Friday night, going into Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and going into your Sunday morning. I do believe most of the rain is going to come Saturday morning, pretty early in the morning hours at that. And once again, pretty early in the morning hours on Sunday, maybe as you're waking up, heading out the door, getting ready for church. But we will have clearing in the cloud cover. It's not going to be a dreary and widespread overcast atmosphere as you head outside each and every day. So our afternoon high temperatures continue to be above average each of the next 3 days. 78 for a high temperature Friday afternoon into 80 degrees. Some models are even calling for some low to mid 80s as we go into Saturday afternoon. I'm not necessarily sure I buy that, but it is going to be a pretty warm day once the clouds get out of here from the morning into the afternoon on Saturday. And part of the reason for the temperatures being that high is take a look at this. This is your morning low temperature, 60 degrees on Saturday. That cloud cover building in overnight Friday into early Saturday morning is going to result in some warmer morning low temperature values. So it's not going to feel as blistering cold throughout the next couple of mornings. Go ahead and soak that in. And this is also just due to the increase in moisture content that we will receive. But like I said, go ahead and soak it in because these numbers are more than likely going to get cut in half as we go into Monday and Tuesday. But But 80 degrees transitioning into a low of 59 degrees on Sunday, then 76 degrees. So it looks like we're starting to feel a little bit of a cool down in between Saturday and into Sunday. That will be a very drastic cool down between Sunday and into Monday. So it is still the fall season. I know Halloween was as of last Friday, but you can still head out and go get yourself a pumpkin. Pumpkins are still in season until we get into the end of the month of November. You can celebrate Thanksgiving with a couple of pumpkin decorations. If you're heading out to the pumpkin patch, I do expect the afternoon hours on Saturday to be the best time, but once again, the morning hours, both Saturday and Sunday, is when the rain will be the most widespread. I think you may just have to duck and dodge a few spotty showers throughout the day on Saturday afternoon and maybe a little bit into Sunday afternoon, say down in our southeasternmost counties. If you live farther up to the northwest, I think Sunday afternoon is going to be absolutely perfect in terms of going outside, not having that rain interrupt your outdoor plans. And along with that, 76 degrees for a high temperature, that's more so on the upper end of the temperature range. It's going to be one of the middle ground high temperatures that we like to call. That front is moving from the northwest down to the southeast. So what that means is areas to the northwest going to feel the impacts behind that frontal boundary earlier than, say, areas like Dodge County, Telfair County, Wheeler County, Lawrence County. So you have the potential to climb into the mid to upper 70s throughout Sunday afternoon. The farther southeast that you live, you may not make it out of the 60s for high temperatures on Sunday afternoon if you live farther up to the northwest. Monroe County, Lamar County, Jasper County, up here in Bibb County, those are the counties I'm looking at when I say that. So for your weekend grill cast, just have caution each and every day. I do expect most of the rain chances to be out of the picture on Sunday, but I think the winds, those gusty winds, obviously that's kind of a recipe for disaster with that open flame on the grills. So that's why I still have the yellow spatula on Sunday evening. But Friday and Saturday evening, just check the radar. Once again, that 24/7 stream we have here on 13 WMAZ Plus. Before you're heading out to the grill, go ahead and check that live radar imagery, see if there's any rain near you. If not, you're good to go. You got a good window of about 30 minutes to an hour before anything will probably start to try to pop up, and it's going to be very scattered in nature. So I imagine many of you are probably not going to have anything in the way of rain to impact those plans. However, if you do get a little bit unlucky, Mother Nature sends a shower or maybe even a low-end thunderstorm your way, you're obviously going to want to be prepared. And your pickleball forecast. Going in the mornings, not necessarily the wisest choice. And I know that's that is the time that a lot of you like to head out to the kitchen and get your pickleball on because it's a cooler portion of the day. But the afternoons are actually going to be the time frame that you want to go out on Saturday and on Sunday. Friday, I imagine many of you maybe already made your way out to the pickleball courts earlier on Friday morning. For the rest of the day on Friday, we should be predominantly dry, but you could run into some showers. Just be cautious of those slippery areas that are still lingering, some of those puddles that haven't quite dried up yet, because we will have occasional cloud cover. I expect some spotty puddles to linger and maybe some lower lying areas that do receive some rainfall each and every day. So my recommended weekend attire is just going to be all weekend long. You can definitely break out the short sleeve t-shirt, the shorts, you can have the sunglasses present at times, but you're wanting to keep the rain jacket and the umbrella handy and ready to go just in case you need it, because if you don't bring that rain jacket or umbrella, Mother Nature also has a funny way of making sure a rain shower does interrupt your plans. So let's pick it up with the long-range models. I did do a lot of talking about what's in store for the beginning of next week. In terms of rainfall, there's absolutely nothing. We clear out already mainly by the nighttime hours on Sunday, but Monday morning going to be off to a clear start, maybe getting a bit of a later image of that sunshine in the morning, as we will have plenty of clouds and we will also have some rain off to the east of us. But then after that, Veterans Day on Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday, it is going to be a quiet weather forecast until the European is trying to pick apart some kind of system, maybe bringing some showers into the northern portion of the state of Georgia. GFS definitely not on board with that. We'll continue to fine tune that as we get closer to the end of next week. But this is the reasoning for your weather impact alert. Monday morning, 36 degrees. And yes, I know it's not as low as 26 degrees on Tuesday, but you're pairing this up with some pretty gusty winds. So I imagine 36 is more than likely going to feel below freezing temperature. I wouldn't even put it out of the realm of possibility that we see some form of a frost advisory on Monday. But then going into Tuesday, Hard freeze expected. 28 degrees is that magic number for a hard freeze, and we are forecasted to dip below this. It's not often we have a lot of confidence in a forecast a couple days out, but the only trend we've seen so far throughout the work week has been the numbers getting lower and lower and lower. I think we started out around freezing temperature on Monday, forecasting the temperatures for the beginning of next week, and they have gone all the way down to 26. And I told you, once again, that's not even the lowest end of some of the models. Some models are calling for 23 as you walk out the door on Tuesday. And if we keep the breeze present, we very well could have some feels like numbers around there. But I do expect some mid to upper 20s to welcome you outside on Veterans Day morning. Still right there on the freezing temperature number as we go into Wednesday morning, but it will be a very quick warm up with nothing in the way of impactful weather systems in store as we go into Thursday. 41 degrees for a morning low temperature, which is still mighty chilly, but it's going to feel a whole lot better than 26 will feel on Tuesday morning. For your afternoon high temperatures, that also is another story. Continue to keep that layering on in the afternoons on Monday and Tuesday. A breezy afternoon with a high temperature of 50, that is going to be a very chilly, reminiscent winter day. Well before we enter the winter season, we're still about a month and a half away from entering that winter season, and it's going to be equally as chilly Tuesday afternoon. Only an increase of about 3 degrees, but eventually we make our way back into the 60s and the 70s very quickly throughout the course of 48 hours between Tuesday and Thursday, a temperature increase of nearly 20 degrees in the high temperature department. So your weather impact alert next Tuesday morning. And I think the time frame that we're going to be below that freezing temperature mark, I may even put this a little bit earlier, but I would say past midnight, right around the midnight hour, all the way into, say, around 9 or 10 a.m. So it's going to be a prolonged period that those temperatures are forecasted to be below freezing. That's not exactly fine-tuned, but we will get there as we go across the course of this weekend. The impact is going to be morning low temperatures below the 32-degree mark, and like I said, not just 31 or 30 degrees, well down below freezing, somewhere in the mid to upper 20s. That will result in a hard freeze here. So what you need to do is protect those 4 P's: pipes, plants, people, and your pets. We'll go over some specific safety tips that you can utilize as we go into next Tuesday. But like I said, throw this in the back of your head. It's not of immediate concern right now. We still have a warm weekend with even a couple of isolated storm chances to get through before we have to start talking about this. So your freeze warning, what we mean when we say that, this is going to be issued when significant widespread freezing temperatures are expected. Okay, go ahead and check that box. I just told you how cold we're going to get and what that hard freeze criteria is. It is for areas still in the growing season. And a news flash for you, we're all still in the growing season here in Central Georgia. Basically, the date that the growing season is going to end, it's going to be in this kind of lighter shade of text that you do see here at the bottom. Until November 20th or until each county's first hard freeze, which is 28 degrees or colder. I do anticipate most areas are going to get that hard freeze on Tuesday morning. You may get lucky, may only pop down to 30 or 29 degrees. Consider yourself very lucky if that is the case, but I do expect this to be widespread. About 75% of Central Georgia should see temperatures at 28 or even below that threshold. But you may think this is a bit early, so let's go over your first freeze dates that we've seen here in the Macon area. The earliest time we've hit freezing temperature, October 14th, back in 1988, so that would have been about a month ago in time. So think about that. We were just ending the Georgia National Fair, and we had some freezing temperatures back in 1988. So that feels way too early, and that is the earliest we've seen on record. So of course, that would have been our earliest date that we've seen those sub 32 degree marks. So the latest freeze, one day after Christmas, 1918. So that's getting into over 100 years ago, over a century ago that we did have our latest freeze on December 26. But if you take into account all the dates, all time, when we first hit that freezing temperature mark of 32 degrees, November 11th is your average first freeze. Does that sound familiar? Because that is the date of Veterans Day next Tuesday. So we are exactly on schedule for when we typically see that first freeze on average. So Veterans Day morning, not too atypical to start to see some numbers as low as 32 degrees or even lower as we roll into the middle portion of November. So more on those safety tips I was referring to. Make sure that you're dressing warm when spending time outdoors. I know maybe there's a lot of construction workers, a lot of landscapers. I'm sure a lot of landscapers will probably not be working in this frigid cold weather. But anytime that you're spending outdoors, make sure you're wearing that layering, especially in the morning hours when temperatures are as low as they can go. But the afternoons are still going to be breezy and well below average, somewhere in the 50s. You'll want to utilize the puffer jacket, any form of layers that you can give yourself, and bring your pets indoor for the night. And I would go ahead and start doing that on Sunday night. So if you have dogs or cats that like to roam around outside and enjoy some of the warmer weather that we have for most of the calendar year, make plans to bring them inside, because if it's too cold for yourself outside, it is too cold for your furry friends to spend the night outdoors. I would make plans to bring them in Sunday night, Monday night, and Tuesday night. And then we should get back above that freezing temperature mark, but it's still going to be mighty chilly. You may just want to go ahead and make plans to start bringing them in pretty frequently as we head into this cooler portion of the year. In terms of your pipes, first things first, drain and disconnect any outdoor hoses or faucets. So obviously a lot of your hoses attach themselves to those sprinkler spigots or those outdoor pipes. Make sure that you're not only turning those off, but you're also continuing to press the nozzle on the hose and get all that water out of the hose that could linger in there and freeze over, and that would result in some cracks and some bustings of your hoses that you do keep outdoors. And that's the last thing you want, to go have to make a trip to Lowe's on those frigid afternoons Monday and Tuesday to go buy yourself a new one. But also exposed pipes, wrap those in insulation, something like styrofoam cups, anything that you can find maybe in the form of styrofoam, just to keep those a little bit warmer and prevent them from freezing over any of the water that's a little bit farther into those pipes. And what I mean by exposed pipes, that could be pipes that are outdoors, or that could be pipes that are in rooms that are not well insulated in your house, specifically garages. We know how cold the garage is typically when you walk outside from the air or from the heat as we go into the winter season. So make sure that you're wrapping those in the proper insulation. And make sure you're watering your plants before freezing temperatures occur. So I think the prime time to water your plants will be Sunday afternoon. Make sure they have time to allow a lot of that water to evaporate. And then you're going to want to cover the more sensitive plants and the crops that you do have. If you just have some potted plants, bring them inside or bring them into a more well-insulated area just for the nighttime hours. But in terms of crops, obviously you can't go on planting all of the crops that you have in a field. Make sure that you have some form of a tarp or something to allow those to just withstand the elements for a little bit as we go into the beginning portion of next week. So I did talk a whole lot about some cold weather. Who's ready to talk about some warm weather? As we go into your extended forecast, November 14th through the 20th. That is going to be next Friday all the way through the following Thursday. A very good probability of seeing some above average temperatures in central Georgia, but that's also correlating to a pretty dry stretch of weather, which does make sense. You're going to remain nice and sunny. That will allow for the steady warming trend day by day. It does look like we have a slight probability, probably the slimmest probability you can have, of having some below normal precipitation levels. Areas down in Florida are actually going to have a greater probability than we will. And it looks like most of northern central Georgia, northern Georgia, actually forecasted to remain near the normal amount of precipitation for that time period, November 14th through the 20th. And the rain chances are a lot better in areas farther up to the north like Tennessee and Kentucky. So looking ahead, Veterans Day in 4 days, and that is when your weather impact alert will be in 4 days. Obviously, if you're watching this Saturday, you're watching this Sunday, it was going to be 3 days or 2 days away from that weather impact alert, but obviously lots of celebrations to honor those veterans that are in your life. And then a week later after that, we have Stuff the Truck that we are kicking off. We began running lots of promos throughout the past week here. It is one of our favorite times of the year where we go out to local Walmarts and we gather all the canned goods and the non-perishable food that we can to help out those in need of some food this holiday season. All the more important with the government shutdown happening and the SNAP benefits having a freeze on them. So continue to help us out. Mark that in your calendar. We will be in Milledgeville in 11 days at the Walmart. We will be in Dublin on that following Wednesday, and then we will be in Warner Robins and up here in Macon on that Thursday in 13 days. I myself will be out in Warner Robins. Come say hey to me. I'll be out there for the noon show, probably sometime around 10 a.m. all the way till about 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Come out, say hey, and go spend about $5 on some canned goods and help out those who need some food. Because Thanksgiving going to be 9 days after Stuff the Truck. So that's where you do obviously have something to look forward to in terms of getting off of work, getting off of school, having those breaks from reality, and of course a lot of good football if you're like myself. And then Black Friday, 1 day later, and that's when many of you will be doing your shopping and getting ready for the Christmas season. But it's also an important day for myself because you see this red and black tie right here. The Dogs will be taking on the Jackets up in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Yes, that game is on a Friday, not a Saturday, so don't go making plans for maybe your Friday night because the Dogs will be playing. Saturday is when the rest of the rivalry games will be going on. And taking a look at your tropics, which we will continue to mention, but there's a whole lot of nothing going on out there. No activity expected in the next 7 days, and it will continue to be that way, very likely through the rest of your hurricane season. So that'll do it for your extended forecast. Like I said, lots to cover weather-wise. Have the rain jacket ready to go over the course of this weekend. We'll get the rain chances out of here Monday, but trade in that rain jacket for the puffer coat as it's going to be blistering cold. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you Monday.